Have you ever been at that point in your life that you're just tired? You're just wore out. You're burnt out. It doesn't seem like you can make it any farther. Things isn't going the way that you thought that they should go. Well, that's the way we see a group of people in Exodus chapter 17. They felt greatly discouraged. We know this by their complaining. God had just delivered them out of slavery in Egypt, yet they throw up a firestorm of complaints when they find out they don't have enough water for the people to drink. Let's read it. Exodus 17, 1 through 7. It says, "All the congregations of the people of Israel moved on from the wilderness of Sin by stages, according to the commandments of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, 'Give us water to drink.' And Moses said to them, 'Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?' But the people thirsted there for water. And the people grumbled against Moses and said, 'Why did you bring us out of Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?' So Moses cried to the Lord, 'What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me.' And the Lord said to Moses, 'Pass on before the people, taking with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water shall come out of it, and the people will drink.' And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the name of that place Massah and Meribah, because of the quarrels of the people of Israel, and because they tested the Lord, saying, 'Is the Lord among us or not?'" You know, when I read those verses, what really stands out to me the most is verse 7. Is the Lord among us or not? Now, I know that it's easy for us to look back and to judge the Israelites here, but don't we ask the same questions at times? Is the Lord among us? When I'm going through this difficult situation, is he among us? Where is God? When that trial came or that accident happened, where was he? Why can't I ever find him when I need him the most? These are questions that we have all asked at some time in our life. But when we look at the Israelites here, we see that they're tired, they're hungry, they're thirsty. So they question whether God cares about them or was even interested in their situation. And then that's when they suffered a very unwanted attack. Because right after that, we get in verse 8, it says, "Then Amalek came and fought with Israel." So they're thirsty, they're complaining, they're at their breaking point, and then they look up, and here comes people for battle. Isn't that how life works at times? We're right there on the breaking point. We can't make it any farther. And then there comes a battle. You know, we feel like we've hit rock bottom, but about that time, somebody hands us a shovel and says, "Dig a little bit deeper." But fortunately for Moses and the Israelites, God was still among them. In fact, they were about to experience the power and the provisions of Yahweh Nisi. The Lord is my banner. Now, when the Amalekites attacked Moses, Moses knew that this wasn't a situation that they could run from. Although they were tired and they were worn down, they had to fight. And that's what happens in our life. Oftentimes when those battles come in our life, there's nowhere to go. We can't go back. We're hemmed in on both sides. We have to go forward. No matter how tired, no matter how wore out we have become, we still have to fight. So Moses gave instructions to Joshua, his military commander, and this is what he said. He said, "Choose for us men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So basically what he's saying is, Joshua, you get a group of men together, you go out in the valley to fight, and I'm going to go up on this hill and hold a staff in the air. It's not really the best advice or the best military tactic that we've ever seen, but that's exactly what happens. The next day, Moses climbs the nearest hill, and he's holding up his staff while Joshua's army begins to engage the Amalekites. But the interesting thing that we read in the scriptures is, as long as Moses held his staff in the air, very high, that the Israelites would begin to prosper in the battle. But whenever his arms got tired and his staff started to fall, then the Amalekites would begin to prevail. Now, when we look at this whole situation, one thing that we see is this battle that they were facing was not entirely a physical battle. There's a supernatural element that was involved in the fight, and it was connected with Moses' staff. And the reason that it was connected to Moses' staff, and the staff was so important, is because God had sanctified it. He had set it apart. This was the same staff that had turned into a snake, that had ushered in the plagues, that had brought water from a rock, and had parted the Red Sea. The staff had become the symbol through which God would use and display his power. Moses was involved in a spiritual battle. Spiritual battles are very tiring. As Moses continued to hold his staff up, his hands began to grow weary. He started to lose his strength. But fortunately, he had help. Moses, when he began to fade, Aaron and Hur stood beside him and held his hands up, ensuring victory for his people. Let me tell you, don't ever think that you have to face the trials of this life on your own. In fact, don't ever think that you can face the trials of this life on your own. Just like Moses, you need help. I need help. That's the reason that I'm so thankful that we have the church, because it provides a place for us to find those Aarons and Hurs in our life that we need. That's why I love the Institute of Marriage. When me and Nellie was dating, oftentimes to encourage me, to tell me that she wasn't going to go anywhere and that she would be beside of me no matter what happened, she'd often play the Rascal Flatts song, the I Won't Let Go. It says, I will stand by you. I will help you through. When you've done all you can do, if you can't cope, I will dry your eyes. I will fight your fight. I will hold you tight. I won't let go. You know, that encouraged me to know that I'm not in this life by myself, that I have a partner that will be here to support me, to encourage me, to hold my arm up when it begins to get tired. But for us, it's oftentimes not easy to ask others for help. We know that we need it at times in our life, but we struggle with actually asking people, I need your help, I need your prayers. You know, when we look at what happened with Moses, him holding the staff up, it wasn't the fact that he was holding the staff up that caused Israel to win. It was what it symbolized. Moses holding the staff up symbolized his petition to God, just like prayer is for us. As long as we keep praying, as long as we keep holding up that staff, we will become victorious. But the moment that we stop, that we become too weary and too tired to continue to pray, and we don't have anyone around us that is praying for us, we'll begin to fail. We'll begin to lose. When the battle was over, the Israelites came through victoriously. And Moses knew that something important had happened. He understood that God had done something new. And rightfully so, he began to worship. Verse 15 tells us that Moses built an altar and called the name of it, "The Lord is my banner." In Hebrew, it's Yahweh Nisi. The Lord is my banner. You know, today we associate banners with a flag or a piece of material that we place on display. But in biblical times, a banner could be any number of things. A banner most of the time meant that you was fighting under someone else's authority. So to approach God as Yahweh Nisi is to look toward Him as the source of your power and deliverance in your life. The Lord is my banner means that God has made Himself evident and available for those who look for Him in the time of need. Now, it's true that most Christians today don't have something that they can experience quite like Moses' staff. We don't have a physical banner that helps us focus on God's presence and access to His power. Yet God has still given us a banner to use each and every day to deal with the realities and the challenges that we face in this life. Jesus Christ is our banner. But before we can fully appreciate Jesus as our banner, we need to discover another important truth that we learned from Exodus chapter 17. You will see that the Israelite battle was a strange mix of combination between natural armies and supernatural intervention. On the one hand, Joshua and the Israelite soldiers had a road to go down in the valley and to fight. But on the other hand, the outcome of the battle didn't completely depend on their efforts alone. The Israelites could achieve victory only as Moses would hold his staff up in the air. In other words, the battle was a mix between a physical and spiritual warfare. When we deal with spiritual warfare in our life, usually what we see is one of two extremes. Some people will fight only on that mountaintop. They will say, I'm going to trust in God, I'm going to stay in touch with Him, I'm going to back up, and I'm not going to do anything. While others of us seek to fight that battle completely in the valley. They look at their own strengths, their own willpower, their own determination and resources for an outcome to win. Yet, they neglect God. And we need to find middle ground there. It reminds me of that illustration, the story of the man that there was a flood that was coming across, and he was climbing up a building, and he's probably around on the first or second floor at this time, and the waters just keep rising, and this boat comes by. He says, I'll save you if you get in the boat. The guy said, no, that's fine. God will save you. Well, the flood keeps coming. It goes up a little bit more. He's about on the 4th or 5th level at this time. Another boat comes through and says, I'll save you. All you have to do is get in the boat. I'll save you. He says, no, God will save you. So now, by this time, he's on the rooftop. The water's about to take him away, and here comes this helicopter. And the helicopter pilot says the same thing. I will save you. All you have to do is climb up this rope. I will save you. He says, no, God will save you. Well, then he drowns. And he gets to heaven, and he says, God, I thought you was going to save me. He says, well, I sent you 2 boats and a helicopter. What did you expect? We need to find that middle ground of trusting in Him, relying on His strength, but also to work ourselves. Because as believers and followers of Christ, you have a responsibility to do all that you can do to address the challenges and the trials that you face in this life. Yet unless God is also supportive and engaged with you in the fight, your effects will not be enough. 2 Corinthians 5:21 and 6:1 says, for our sake He made Him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in Him we might become the righteousness of God. Working together with Him, then we appeal to you not to receive the grace of God in vain. Now, the part that I want to point out is where it says working together with Him. You know, there are legitimate moments in life when God instructs us just to wait. just to be still and know that I am God. But there are also times when people say that they're just waiting on God, when God is waiting on them to act out on faith. The key to finding that balance between what God does on the mountain and what our responsibilities is in the valley. We need to find that middle ground. We're never to excuse irrationality in the name of God. Yet our personal responsibility alone isn't sufficient to achieve all that he wants to achieve in our lives. In the midst of that battle, midst of the conflict, in the midst of the war. So we have to look to our banner. Our banner is Jesus Christ. He is our Nisi. He's our banner, and whoever looks to him will have access to God's supernatural power for salvation, eternal life. It doesn't matter how good you are. It doesn't matter how much you try, how much money that you have or you earn, or how hard you work. You have to depend on him. All your good efforts will result in nothing if you don't look to your banner for victory. 2 Corinthians 2:14 says, "But thanks be to God, who in Christ always leads us in triumphal processions, and through us spread the fragrance of the knowledge of him everywhere." Colossians 2:15 says, "He disarms the rulers and authorities and puts them to open shame by triumphing over them in him." So what does these scriptures teach us about Jesus as our banner? Well, first of all, before you give up, look up. And we've all came to those times in our life that we're just tired. We just can't make it anymore, that we just want to throw in the towel. But before you do that, look up. Fix your eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. Because the battle has already been won. Jesus will always enable you to triumph. Because he's already defeated Satan through his works on the cross. And that makes us more than conquerors, no matter what happens in this life. You know, maybe you're here today and you haven't been that more than a conqueror. You've been trying to handle all your problems and your issues and the trials that you face in this life on your own. You've been trying to fight in the battle, but the harder you fight, the more it seems like you just become beat down. It's because we need someone on the mountain. We need that banner. We need another source of strength to help us through. Because we're never going to be able to make it on our own. And that source is Jesus Christ. If you've not accepted him today, you can come now and lay your life down at his feet. Whatever your decision is, come now as we stand.